What's going on with everyone? I don't have time to waste because I just learned something interesting. If you own XRP or invest in it, you should listen to this right now. Take a look. The world sounds and feels rough. There is a lot of stress around the world, and news stories keep coming out that make you feel like everything is breaking at once. And most people do one thing when the noise is that loud. In a fear, they get cold, they make money, it makes them sad. The real power players, on the other hand, are doing something completely different while the crowd deals with the chaos. They are getting together, making plans, and preparing quietly for what will happen next. The World Economic Forum is the next stop on my list. The WEF, of course. When people hear the words World Economic Forum, they either roll their eyes or think it means that rich people are making speeches. However, you will hear something else if you pay close attention. People talk about money in different ways now. There are changes in how people talk about the parts of the banking system that work, and it's not fun when the people who run the pipe start talking about rewiring. That is a sign. I was listening to a World Economic Forum meeting. There are 4 people up there, but only 2 are important for this film. An official from BNY Mellon, or Bank of New York Mellon, one of the largest banks in the world, is in the middle. On the right, you can see CZ with Binance. There are 2 sounds there. Pay attention because what they say fits with what I'm about to show you. We need to talk about the host of this group first, though, because they tell you what kind of talk is coming up. Her name is Kristen Forbes. Before we go any further, I want you to know who she is and why that is important. You can see from her past that she is a serious macroeconomist and policy advisor. But now comes the part that should get your attention. She is on expert boards for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the Bank for International Settlements, BIS. This is what her bio says. Read it again. IMF, BIS, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. That's not just host energy. In other words, I'm in places where energy from the future is drawn. It's not a mistake when she steers the conversation toward pipes, plumbing, settlement, and getting everything to work together. The important thread is being pulled by her. This is where things get interesting. I'm going to show you a public IMF paper, the International Monetary Fund to be exact. This is not a story. It's open to everyone. You can find it at imf.org. It's from 2023 and is about cross-border payments, which are how money goes between countries. And you already know how painful it is if you've ever sent money abroad. It takes too long, costs too much, and is a mess. That's not just what I think. The IMF says these deals are expensive, take a long time, and are hard to understand. They also talk about the problems that arise when there are many middlemen and systems that are broken up. After that, the paper talks about ways to make cross-border payments better. People need to stop scrolling and read from now on, because that's where they show models for how these rails could be made better for everyone. They talk about how to build trust. They talk about shops and markets. They talk about the assets of the deal. They give examples when they talk about one of these models that uses a private payment asset and a market. Yes, Ripple's XRP is one of the cases they give. Stellar is also talked about. They even talk about other methods such as DeFi networks and the idea of using crypto lines that aren't backed by anything, like Bitcoin with the Lightning Network. They also give examples such as Strike. This is the difference between talking about the internet and talking about technology. Not one coin is being held up as the winner. They are making a map of the area. If we want cheaper, faster, and clearer cross-border payments, they want to know what structures might work when you scale them widely, across banks, across regulators, and across real-world needs. You can see these models next to each other on page 26 of that paper. On that page, they use Ripple's XRP as an example of a marketplace plus settlement asset. That doesn't mean the IMF supports XRP. Do not change what I said. This is what it means. Institutions that are serious about planning for the future use XRP on their whiteboards. Step 1 is being seen. Step 2 is to think about it. Step 3 is to test. This is the 4th step. That's how building infrastructure comes to life. This part should make you think. They don't stand up and shout Ripple XRP on the event itself. They don't. It doesn't surprise me. These are talks between institutions in public places. They're not going to do nothing but make noise. They are going to talk about groups, exchange, settlement, on-chain, off-chain, security, pipes, and plumbing. But you know what belongs in a category if you know what that category is. Let's go back to the panel. Kristen Forbes starts things off by setting the tone. She says that there's a lot going on in payments and money, But there's also a lot going on in the lines and plumbing of how money moves. She talks about pipes, plumbing, and how the pipes work over and over again. That's the language of building things. That's the language of the part you can't see but must have. Then she asks the question that makes everything else possible. At each person in the line, she asks, what new development are you most excited about? Which reworking is the most important? She also comes up with a bunch of groups: investing, private credit, Bitcoin, stablecoins, digital currencies, ledger technology, and yes, more water problems. The first guy says, cool, not the point. Then we hear from the BNY Mellon agent, and pay attention to what she says. Interoperability is the thing that she thinks is most important in all of the financial news, trends, and buzzwords. There should be interoperability between public and private markets, between on-chain and off-chain, and between stocks and different types of assets. The future, in her words, is about getting these different systems to work together smoothly and talk to each other. The same idea will be clear to you if you've read that IMF document. It's hard to send money across borders because there are many separate systems, trust zones, and standards. Building a bridge is interoperability. It's really the trust bridge issue. The pipe is broken. It's still true that value doesn't change like data does. This is important to me because of these reasons. Brad Garlinghouse, the founder of Ripple, has been using that exact frame for years. He said that what's going on with value transfer is like what happened with the internet. Data sharing is what made the internet so popular. Everything could talk to everything else. Any machine could share data around the world. He has also said that value interoperability, moving money the same way data moves, is the next big thing. When a big bank like BNY Mellon says interoperability is the most important thing, the IMF talks about payment models that use XRP as an example of a settlement asset approach, and people talk about rewiring pipes and plumbing. You're not crazy for making connections. It's not that you're trying to find trends. As a smart trader, you're keeping an eye on what institutions say when they think they're talking to other institutions. That's not all Kristen does. She talks about Bitcoin and El Salvador and makes a point that many people miss. El Salvador worked hard to get people to use Bitcoin as a way to pay, especially for sending money back to El Salvador from workers who were sent abroad. On paper, it makes sense to use it that way. Cut down on transaction fees, speed up payments, and get around common fees. But she says that even though there has been marketing and work, not many people have signed up. People were excited about it, but it didn't become widely used for everyday purchases like they thought it would. After that, she asks a second question that is one of the most telling ones on the whole panel. In her question, what is exciting people right now that won't even be talked about in 10 years? And CZ answers right away. His main point is that if you had asked him 10 years ago, he would have said Bitcoin payments. Then he says, well, 10 years later, we're still not quite there. He says he doesn't trust payments. Take that in. CZ from Binance, one of the biggest names in crypto, said in public that he doesn't think crypto payments will become common in the easy, clean way that people think they will. Now connect this. The host points out that Bitcoin payments did not take over money transfers like many people thought they would. CZ says he doesn't trust payments. At the same time, BNY Mellon says that the most exciting change is that on-chain and off-chain markets can now work together. The IMF is also putting out guidelines for improving cross-border payments. These include marketplace plus settlement asset models, and XRP is used as an example. Not at all. Bitcoin is still alive. That does not mean that payments will be made tomorrow. It means that the talk is moving from hype to infrastructure, from catchphrases to systems, and from what coin will pump to what networks can actually settle value at scale with real rules and compliance. Let me show you another piece that many people don't know about. This is where the link to BNY Mellon goes beyond just being on the panel. There have been reports in the media and official statements that Ripple has chosen BNY Mellon to be the main custodian for reserves related to its stablecoin RLUSD. Take note that Ripple chooses BNY. That's a modern company that builds infrastructure for digital assets, picking one of the world's largest traditional banks to hold their funds. Again, don't take this to mean that BNY Mellon supports XRP or that everything is certain. That's not what I mean. I'm saying that this is how water in a public building looks. In real life, this is what on-chain and off-chain connectivity looks like. It's integration, it's compliance, it's openness, it's the old world connecting to the new rails. Another part of the group talks about the future of banks in more depth. Kristen asks, how worried should we be about banks as they have always been? If we wait 10 years, will the banking system be very different? The person from BNY Mellon responds with a strong but simple point. Banks will fall behind if they only use old tools and don't come up with new ones. She talks about paper checks as an example. Checks were new once upon a time, but if a bank's name became "We Are the Check Bank" and they never changed, they would go out of business. She also says that the same thing is true now, but things change much more quickly. After that, she talks about something that investors in markets should care about. As technology gets better, things like AI trade, algorithmic execution, and price changes can happen faster than people can respond. That makes things unstable. That leads to hurting. That leads to risks and quick chains of events. Moving on to the next key phrase, settlement times, managing security, and real-time value changes. A lot of people skip this part because it sounds dull. But cash is in this area because you can't handle risk quickly if you can't settle down quickly. Your systemic stress won't go down quickly if you can't move debt quickly. There is a mismatch when markets move at the speed of a machine and payment is still stuck in infrastructure that moves more slowly. Cash flow management will change if payment times go from days to almost real time. Risk for the other party changes, the utility of capital changes, the grid changes in every way. Still, another word that keeps coming up is interoperability. Value networks can talk to each other like data networks. That is the exact idea Brad Garlinghouse talked about. Interoperability is important, and that's exactly the type of thing the IMF paper is looking into. Assets for payment, money flows, markets, and trust bridges that make things run more smoothly. This is the big question you ask me. Am I getting longer? Am I reaching out? I'm not crazy. But you do need to be clear. This is the fair view. These are, in fact, real organizations talking about real infrastructure issues. Paying across borders is inefficient because of settling problems, complicated collateral, and the need to integrate on-chain and off-chain. That part can't be argued with. Yes, interoperability is an important issue that comes up a lot at the institutional level. That fits with what Ripple has been working on for years. Yes, XRP is talked about and studied in a serious way as an example of a larger group of options. That's important because being seen and thought about are necessary for adoption. But no, one panel or paper doesn't mean that XRP will automatically win. There may be more than one network, more than one rail, more than one settlement asset, and a mix of public and private services in the future. Rules, acceptance, and technology implementation are all important. If what you think this means is that XRP will moon tomorrow, that's not true. What you should know is that the people who run the pipes are openly talking about rewiring and sharing, which is exactly the lane that XRP was made for. That's why I'm telling the XRP army not to be scared by every news story. In a busy market, don't let price action make you think that the long-term story has gone away. From what I can tell, the discussion is getting better. It is going away from memes and toward building things. And building infrastructure doesn't happen when you want it to. It follows the schedule set by the organization. It is slow, careful, and willing to bend, but it is huge once it locks in.